Well, hello and howdy. We are in off-season mode here at Front Range Hockey. Scott, aloha, my friend.
Aloha. How's it going, brother?
Nice little shaka there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming from a nice little vacation in Hawaii after the Avs were eliminated from the postseason.
Did.
Some much-needed R&R. And if you follow the man on Instagram or Snapchat, he detailed and chronicled his vacation quite thoroughly. And I was a little bit jealous that I wasn't chilling with him on the Pacific Ocean rather than dealing with these wonderful mid-90s to high 90s temperatures that were here in the Denver metro area.
That.
Yeah.
It set some records. I was like reading about that, and I was like, man, I thought it was going to be hot in Hawaii. And like, it was 82, like every single day that we were there. And I'm looking at my, checking the weather app on my iPhone or just reading about how I think like it was like Thursday last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, like Colorado had its first ever like heat warning advisory or so. I don't know. I skimmed it, but yeah, it hit like 104 in Denver or something, like 106, 107, like Grand Junction. I was like, geez.
Yeah, it was rough. It was brutal.
Outside right now. I mean, it's cloudy. It rained a little bit here in Denver, so that's good.
It did.
I think the forecast this weekend is supposed to be rainy, and that's great because it is peak fire season, and it's been dry. And we talk about it all the time. If you're from Colorado or California, even we have our struggles. Between June and September every year, it's brutal and it sucks. And I think I read not too long ago they're projecting it to be like the worst wildfire season like Colorado or California has seen, just based on like weather projections and like water projections. And California's been in a drought for the longest time. And actually, like, so going back to Hawaii real quick, we were on we went on this Jurassic Park tour, which is pretty cool. It was like Kualoa Ranch. They filmed a bunch of movies there: Lost, Jurassic Park, King Kong, all that kind of stuff. So that was cool. And while we were going around in the Jeep, just checking some sites out, and I guess their rainy season's like January to March or something like that, and they got something like 137 inches of rain in the span of 2 weeks in March on the island of Oahu. And the guy's like, that's more rain than this whole state of California has gotten in 10 years combined that they got in 2 weeks. And I was like,
oh my God.
So just to like juxtapose it, like that's how dry California is. Like they just doesn't rain there. Like you would think, being by the ocean, it should be, I don't know, maybe a similar climate to Hawaii, but yeah, I don't know anything about weather. So what would I know? Anyway, we're getting off on a tangent. That's
it happens. That's how we open the show, is with tangents. Bad weather.
Not a lot of hockey to talk about, so that's the thing. We're gonna have to fill the airwaves with some, I guess, B-roll footage, if you will.
Roll that beautiful bean footage. Not B-roll, but bean footage. Bush's baked beans.
What?
Yeah, you don't remember those commercials?
No,
okay,
what is that?
I'm dating myself.
Before my time. Yeah.
Those were really popular. Like when I was, not so much anymore. But Bush's baked beans. The owner of this dog is like, roll that beautiful bean footage, and so they would cue up the projector and yeah.
Can't believe you have commercials for baked beans.
That's
pretty fun.
Bush's baked beans. And
you can market anything, if they got the money for it. Fuck, why not?
I mean, seriously, but yeah, no, they had the dog there. And speaking of which, real quick before we get started with episode 23, there was a guy that wore number 23 once upon a time. I think his name was Milan Hajduk.
He's a decent guy.
Yeah, decent dude, decent hockey player. Number up in the rafters there at Ball Arena. So episode number 23 of Front Range Hockey today, which is Thursday. Scott was a bit jet lagged from his Hawaii trip yesterday, so we postponed it to today, Thursday, June 24th, 2021. I've got a nice new headset here, thanks to my girlfriend, and not this big monstrosity kind of blocking out that nice little Peanuts calendar that I always reference on the show when I'm looking up dates, and I don't want to be completely obvious. But yeah, speaking of dogs, back to dogs. A little late tonight, since we're airing live on YouTube, because my dog, Riken, which is red in Navajo, if you're not familiar, but Riken, nice little copper-toned Staffordshire Bull Terrier that we have, 14 years old, having some vestibular issues today, but thankfully it coincided with a pre-scheduled stitches removal appointment, so had a benign growth removed from his leg, so he wouldn't, we didn't want him licking it, so long story short, the pup is okay. He's just a little off kilter. And so he's on a steroids regimen now. And I posted it on Twitter. So I figured it would be appropriate to let the masses know here on Front Range Hockey now that we're live how Riken is doing. And Riken is doing okay. He's hanging in there. He's 14 years old, which is the very end of his breed's kind of life expectancy. It's like 12 to 14 years old. But Scott was very concerned, and I appreciate your concern, brother. So, and everybody else giving their likes and their comments, I appreciate it there on the Twitterverse as well. So thank you very much for the good vibes and the love, and appreciate it. And now we're here, Front Range Hockey, episode number 23. So, yeah, like you said, Scott, not a whole lot to talk about in Avs land, at least not active roster-wise. I mean, you got a two-year contract with Jason Megna a few weeks ago now. Mm-hmm. And, that's really the only – a lot of entry-level contracts signed. Let's take a look at that. I mean, a lot of it overlapped in the playoffs for sure. But, yeah, actually we did cover all that. Andreas Wingerly, Trent Miner, Alex Beaucage, Jean-Luc Foudy, all those guys signed to entry-level deals. And, not really a whole lot in Avalanche land to really. Yeah,
I mean, without getting too somber, like I guess we haven't spoken since or did we? No, I think we haven't spoken since the Avs bowed out. Season, but...
like right after they did, because
was it?
I named the episode "Sod So Sod" because
I could have swore it was like right before. I think
it was.
Are you sure?
I believe it was right after.
Okay,
I think it was. I'll go double check real quick, but.
I guess we don't have to rehash it. Yeah, check the dates on that.
I will.
Check the timestamps.
We're in the end of June, and our heads are in the clouds. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, maybe you're right. 'Cause I think I did talk quite a bit about Jared Bednar leaving, and everyone wanting him to leave and fire Joe Sakic, burn everything down, and silly Avs fans being silly, and it comes with the territory this time of year. And I know a lot of people are disappointed about it. Obviously, we're all disappointed. There's great expectations, but they were the favorites. The favorites almost never win. It's
President's Trophy winners. That's a curse in and of itself.
Yeah, so it's a whole thing, and it's unfortunate. We talked about it too. Like I really do think this is a better team, and I talked to Coach Bednar about that too, and it sucks. It's disappointing, but when you look at the way the playoff system worked out, this year, this should have been Final Four teams. Should have been Vegas and Colorado duking it out for the Stanley Cup final berth. But the way the postseason worked, this is just how it was. So I really do think the Avs would have improved. They would have been better had it been a regular 82 game season or whatever. If they would have just gone with the regular playoff format, I truly do think that would have been a Final Four matchup, and that we wouldn't be talking about it so much, because it would have been that's all you can look for. Like, yes, they're not going to win the Stanley Cup, but like they improved since 2016, 2017, when they had that god awful year, 48-point season, 17-18 shocked the world. Won like 10 games in a row there in December, January, and got a playoff berth, and lost to Nashville in the first round. Next year, 18-19, they make it to the second round. We're improving there. Obviously 19-20 was a bit of a disappointment, but the fact they forced out, they're 3 minutes away from making it to the Western Conference Final while in the playoff bubble under the circumstances that they're in, as well as playing a team that was so depleted, had a third of their active roster. I think that was an improvement. I mean, they bowed out the same exact time in 19-20, as they did in the year before. But I think again, 2020-21, this past season, I think they truly would have, made it to the Western Conference Final had the playoff format been set up that way. And it's unfortunate to draw Vegas in the second round. That's going to be tough for any team. And I kind of said it throughout the year. I didn't think the Avalanche had what it took to make it past Vegas, and I thought they lost to Vegas in 7 games, and I kind of predicted that throughout the year. But I thought it was going to be in the Western Conference Final. I didn't think they were a Stanley Cup team. Right. I can now say that publicly and not lose Twitter followers or whatever. Get burned at the stake. So they just they're missing some key pieces. They're a great regular season team. They're fast. They're skilled. That's the way the NHL is trending, and Joe Sakic's built a great team. He's kind of, been forging the path, with respect to building. I mean, the new, I don't know what you want to call it, but like this is the new prototype of teams now in the NHL. And he kind of started that, where it's like, let's, size doesn't necessarily matter anymore. Let's, talk about speed and skill and youth, like the youth movement. He kind of spearheaded that, and a lot of teams are kind of copying it. But, you see that's, that works in the regular season. It works really well in the regular season. They won the regular season's variation of the Stanley Cup, if you want to call it that. So, that's an accomplishment in and of itself. But, at the end of the day, it's like they lack that physicality. And it's not, we talked about it on the last podcast a couple of weeks ago. It's not necessarily hitting, they're not afraid to hit or anything like that. But, I just think they lack that presence on the ice above all. And that's something that Vegas does really well. And you look at Montreal, they're doing the same thing right now, kind of shocking the hockey world. No one expected them to make it this far. And, they might beat up on Vegas, and that would have been a fun matchup to see. And it sucks, watching those games, thinking like the Avs would have had a pretty good chance, I think, against a team like Montreal. But, Vegas is built different, quite literally. Mm-hmm. And they're a bigger, stronger team. They're mentally tougher. That's the biggest thing. I think the Avs, they lack that too. They don't lack the right headspace to be a deep team. It's like, they go down and they wear it on their faces. You look at guys like Nathan McKinnon in the press conference, and, you kind of need your leaders to step up, and they weren't, unfortunately. And you can't just blame it on those guys, but, you need them to kind of be the emotional leaders and kind of lead the charge. But you could just see, they get stopped and they wear it on their faces. They get down and out, and, that's all it takes. Vegas just gets in your head, and you think these guys are impossible to beat, but that's not the case. Like, the Avs need to remind themselves that they're the best team in the NHL. And, all 31 teams need to remind themselves that they're the best team in the NHL, not just the Avalanche, but, teams can do that. And you look at these like underdog teams like Montreal and what they're doing right now. It's like no one expected them to make it this far, and it's all a head thing. It's all a mental game in the playoffs. And, it sucks to wrap all that up. It's disappointing, but had the circumstances been different with the playoff format, they would have made it a little bit further. Conversations would have changed, but it's not a bad thing too. I think we're learning a valuable lesson. I think Coach Bednar and Joe Sakic are learning very valuable lessons too. And I expect some moves to be made in the offseason, and it won't be, Coach Bednar who's leaving, much to the chagrin of a lot of you listeners right now, but
Right.
he's coming back. That's been more or less confirmed by some sources. So that's, I'm okay with that. I think let him play out his final year, light a fire under his ass, make him feel like he's on the hot seat because he's in a contract year, and people tend to perform pretty well, whether they're players or coaches or, anybody. They perform pretty well, under those circumstances of that pressure. So right. I've been saying it, just give him, one more year, learn some valuable lessons. Maybe Joe Sakic go out and acquire a couple of bigger veteran guys that can go the distance in the postseason and know what it takes. We tried to do that. Brandon Saad, who knows if he's coming back or not. He's a UFA, but maybe another guy, re-sign Saad and go out there and get, another Stanley Cup winner. There's quite a few on the UFA list this year. So we'll see. Well, I mean, they're so close. They're so damn close. I think they're one piece away.
Well, and it's, yeah, you were right, Scott, to backtrack a little bit, and sorry, I'm ducking down and eating my Huevos Rancheros right now for dinner because I got home from the vet. Yeah, well, you got to eat when you got to eat, man.
That's fair.
Got home, took the dog to the vet, stayed at the vet for an hour and a half, going through options, and you got to eat when you got to eat.
I respect that.
Yeah, that's why I named this episode Huevos Rancheros, because I'm in the middle of eating. So I would just let you talk, and I'm like, no. So anyway.
Your time. I was like, I could stop right now, but you're just like, I'd see you take a mouthful of food. I was like, oh, I'm going to keep going. Here we go.
I'm sorry.
No,
I mean, yeah, I didn't want you to feel put upon that I was like trying to.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, my timing was poor. I apologize about that, but I've got a couple bites left, and we'll go from there. But no, just to backtrack, our last episode was right before Game 6. You were right. And so, yeah, we hadn't counted the costs and anything.
But we were talking about like how it was going to that was going to be the end of
it. Probably going to be the end of it. Sad, sad. And honestly, it wasn't Brandon Saad's fault because, my God, he had a goal a game for like
everything he could.
The last 7. He did. He tried. I mean, and Bednar even put him on that top line to try and spark a little bit, and it was good. Works. I think they were up. Weren't they up 3-1 in was it game?
Game 5, maybe?
Game 5, and because I feel like the Avs would jump out to these leads, 1 or 2 goal leads.
He's Brandon Saad every time. He'd score the first period,
right.
First goal of the game, like couple games, 2 or 3 games in that series with Vegas.
And then, Vegas would, I feel like they would just get those boom, boom, like those goals. And the Eagles had the same problem, the AHL this year. Like once they let in 1 goal, 2 goals, sometimes 3 goals, 4 goals in a row, and then they just fell apart. And I feel like the Avs kind of took on that identity, unfortunately, in the playoffs as well. But, you mentioned Montreal. I mean, I was guilty of scoffing at Montreal's acquisition of Corey Perry. I'm like, Corey Perry, okay, whatever. And coming out of the tunnel with blood all over his face. Jeff Petrie has got blood halfway up his eyes, looking like a fucking vampire coming at you on the ice there. Cole Caulfield is showing out. Nick Suzuki is showing out. Kotaniemi is showing out. Forgive my Finnish pronunciation there, but like all these guys are stepping up. And all their young guns are stepping up.
It's the perfect blend between, like youth, like the Avs have that, obviously.
Yeah,
you look at, McKinnon's still super young. You got guys like, Alex Newhook, who's the same age as Cole Caulfield. And, they have that perfect blend of veterans that have been through the trenches. They've been through the shit. And, they're big and they're mean, but they also perfectly complement, the youth movement they have there. And like, that's the team. That is, the prototype that Joe Sakic needs to look at this offseason and go out there. And going back to Corey Perry, you just touched on it there. That was a guy, like, I think I tweeted it out and everyone's like, fuck you, you're crazy, Scott. That's stupid. But, that's what you bring the guy in for a veteran minimum. Sign him for $700,000, a year. And he's going to go out there and break his nose, bleed all over the ice, and like still go out there and play and still go celebrate with his teammates. And, he sticks up for his teammates. He gets under the skin. And yes, he has a dirty player past. And, he did some dirty things to the Avalanche in the second round last season, but, he did great things with Dallas too. It doesn't really show up in the regular season, but that's not what he's about. Like, you don't need him that much in the regular season when the Avs are already the best regular season team in the NHL. You don't need a guy like Corey Perry to put up 10, 20 goals like he was in his prime. Score a couple, sure. Like depth scoring is always great, but you sign him for, this time of the year when he's going to go out there and stick. He's a playoff performer. That's what it is. So I think that's, Joe Sakic needs to look at that kind of model and be like, look, we already have 95% of the pieces that, Montreal has. Solid goaltending. The Carey Price, he's old as shit, but he's still, playing great. Great blend of just, young guys, rookies, and, players in their second, third year that are performing really well. The Avs have that. And then, defense, that's kind of an issue, I think, for the Avalanche. They have a really, really good, like, Cale Makar, Sam Girard, all those guys are great. Bo Byram's coming up the pipeline. Like, they're great, but they're small. They don't really play hard. And, a guy like Eric Johnson in the playoffs would have been, the key piece for the Avalanche. And, he's another playoff performer. He's a guy that's going to put his body on the line, block every single shot he can. And yeah, go ahead.
I'm raising my hand. I'm like, hey, Eric Johnson. I was going to say something about him before I was stuffing my face with eggs. Egg sandwich. Eric Johnson. God, if the Avs had made it to the Western Conference Final,
rumor has he would have played.
There would have been a possibility that he would have been available. So another what if, and you can what if till you're blue in the face. I know that, but just the fact that you've got EJ, and now the news, you were correct. You've been correct for months now, at least conjecture wise, of how you thought things were going to go. Not to, shift the topic and the conversation and everything, but EJ, Eric Johnson, looking like he did waive his no trade clause, so that or his no movement clause rather. Sorry, let me specify, so that he could be exposed and potentially go to Seattle. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
I don't know if he's like officially waived, but
okay.
Yeah, I think that's the rumor. I mean, it's again, like I've been saying it for a while. I mean, I think it just makes the most sense. And Eric Johnson's a guy that's been around the block, been around the sun numerous times with this Avalanche team. He's the longest tenured guy in the locker room, been with the team for like 11 years, something like that.
Wow.
He has nothing but love for everybody in that locker room and for the management. And, he's an NHL veteran. He knows it's a business first and foremost. That's how it works. And the dude's taken up like 8% of their cap space and not playing a game. And it's been kind of trending that way for a while. So yeah, I mean, it just makes the most sense. Like he's a guy that, you ask him to waive his no trade clause. That gives you an extra guy to be able to protect, because damn well Seattle's not going to take him. Like there's so many better options that the Avalanche will have. They're not going to take, a 38, 39, I don't even know how old he is, defenseman who, has played 25% of his games over the last 3 years. Like, yeah. So I think it just makes the most sense. I've been saying too, like, I think the Avs try to package deal him, maybe retain some of his salary and ship him off to Seattle, beg them to take him and offer him, a pick and a prospect and take that contract off our hands and don't take anyone else, in the expansion draft. But I don't know. Who knows if that's going to happen. That's, again, like Seattle, like they're a smart team. They're going to play it safe. And that's just, why would we take on, that contract? Like, yeah, it's great. You're offering us, a 3rd round pick, 2nd round pick, maybe, and, a Martin Kaut, but I don't know. Like, I'd rather have Tyson Jost or give me Ryan Graves, like some guy that is still young and has proven himself and can play well. So it's going to be tough. But I think, I don't know if it's like official, but I think he absolutely waives his no trade clause. Seattle's not going to take him unless, the Avalanche offer him a nice deal.
Sweeten the pot. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. But, he's a great, like, I don't think many people would mind if he came back, but we'll get into it. We have a question when we get back to the mailbag here at the end.
Yeah. Like,
there's, people are asking, which UFAs to sign, which RFAs, and like who to sign. And it's like, look, they're so hamstrung on cap space, and you could talk about, all day Seattle's like, well, Seattle's going to take one of those contracts. Like, Seattle's probably going to take, anywhere from $2 to $4 million off your cap space. But then you got to think, that's kind of made up by guys like Logan O'Connor, who, are going to be on the NHL roster next year. He's on a one-way deal next year. Guys like Tyson Jost, if they decide to re-sign him, is going to be more than $1 million or whatever it was he signed for this past season. Guys like Connor Timmins is another one that's, probably going to get re-signed and is going to take some of that space. So it's kind of a wash when you think about it, like Seattle taking a contract off your hands, but it's just going to get made up for in guys that need to re-sign. And the Avalanche need to re-sign a lot of people. I think they have 11 guys on contract right now. Or 30 total, but like 11, like active guys.
Right.
So they have a lot of work to do in-house. And, it starts with Cale Makar and your captain, Gabe Landeskog, and Philip Grubauer, your Vezina, trophy finalist. There's a lot to do in-house. And like those 3 guys right there are going to take up $22 to $25 million of the 25 they have, available right now. So, it's not going to be a fun offseason. It's not going to be exciting. And that's why, like, I think going back to the Corey Perry thing, that's why you need to sign one of those wily veterans for, a league minimum $700,000. Like, look what Toronto just did, signing Jason Spezza to the, absolute league minimum. And he's like 40 something years old, or seems like it. But like, that's the kind of presence you need in the locker room. That's the kind of presence you need in the playoffs. Even if they're not performing, it's about the presence. And that's something the Avalanche lack. They're too young. They're too naive and immature, I think, with respect to the postseason. And yeah. So,
and like you said, Eric Johnson, 33 years old, actually,
God.
Taking up. I know, right?
Seems like he's been in the league for like 20 years.
It really does. And especially with the injuries and him being out and everything, that doesn't help matters. And how much youth is in this D-core coming up through the pipeline and everything. That's just, it makes him seem older than 33. I mean, Jesus, Scott, I'm 34 for crying out loud. So don't make him older. Don't make him an old man.
An old geezer.
Yeah, right? I mean, come on. You're killing me here. But Eric Johnson, 7.4% of the Avs cap, coming in at an even $6 million for the next 2021, 22, and 2022, 23. Yeah, so you don't want to keep him on the books because, like you said, you've got Landeskog, you've got Makar, you've got Grubauer, you've got and we have another question from a fan.
Forecasting next season. Sorry, just to interject there real quick.
Go ahead.
I guess Nathan McKinnon's got 2 years, 2 years left on his contract, but that's another one. It's like, he's said he'd take the hometown discount, and like, he'll take even less on his next contract if it means like we can bring in some pieces and win a Stanley Cup. But this guy's not going to sign for $6.3 million again like he is right now. He's on the friendliest, most valuable contract based on performance of anyone in the league, and the dude's going to make Cale Makar money or Mikko Rantanen money. Like, he's going to get that $9 million range, and I think Mikko kind of set the precedent there at the $9.25 million contract. That kind of just like screwed everything up looking down the pipeline, because
oh god, yeah,
you probably want Nathan McKinnon to be the highest paid player on your team, so you're probably looking at $9.5 million for him. maybe he, takes the hometown discount or whatever, but that's going to be, rough cap space. And hopefully, I don't know. I think we're at 81.5 million cap space through next year. I don't know if that's going, is it the year after that too? I'm not sure.
It wouldn't surprise me with,
or if
COVID
it's going to go
everything.
back up. But yeah, hopefully, I mean, they're going to need it, in 2022, 23, they're going to need a much larger cap space than 81.5, especially with, you think about it, Mikko Rantanen, Nathan McKinnon, probably Gabe Landeskog. And so like your top three guys, your top line, plus Cale Makar are, all going to be making 40%, 45% of your cap space. And that's only four guys. Like,
yeah,
it's going to get expensive. They're going to have to be creative with that. And I'm not envious of Joe Sakic in the slightest.
No, me neither. And we'll definitely address that more in depth, as if 25 minutes wasn't enough, or 20 minutes. I guess the first 5 minutes was talking about Hawaii and Riken and Huevos Rancheros.
Personal.
But that's it for the Avalanche right now. NHL at large, we've got Vegas and Montreal playing at the moment. Montreal leading the series 3-2, now playing game 6, tie game 1-1 at the end of the first period. And then Islanders, possibly the last game at Nassau Coliseum, fans raining down beer cans with an overtime win over the Tampa Bay Lightning 3-2. That game will be on Friday night at 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern. So the Stanley Cup final starting to maybe take shape in the next few days, depending on how these games go. So, yeah, with that said, let's move on from the NHL to the AHL. And if you follow Full Press AHL on Twitter at FPC_AHL, you will find all these transactions are happening. Guys leaving the league, going over to play in Europe, which is a common occurrence every year. They're getting older, 28, 29, 30 years old. They see the writing on the wall, not going to make it on an NHL ticket, or don't want to play in the AHL anymore. They go take more money in Europe. And that, of course, is happening with the Colorado Eagles as well, because we've got 3 guys so far that have jumped over to Europe. I wouldn't say that they made a huge impact last season. Defenseman Matt Apt and Kevin Davis. Kevin Davis, 3 years on an ELC between the Utah Grizzlies and the ECHL and the Colorado Eagles of the AHL. Familiar face in the program, in the organization rather, but boom, he hops over to Europe with defenseman Matt Apt, and also a few days ago announced forward Mika Salamäki, the Finn, jumping over to the Swedish Hockey League to play there next season. But now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about guys coming back. I mentioned Jason Megna signing a 2-year, 2-way deal with the Avs, so he'll be back with the Eagles, no doubt. Cal Burke, after a pretty decent rookie season, is going to be back with the Eagles on an AHL deal, and announced today, one of my favorite players to watch because it gives 110% each shift, and he's shorter in stature as well, so I can appreciate that being a 5'4", 5'5" on a good day. Ryan Wagner, Wags. So 2-year AHL deal with the Eagles. Man, he loves it here. He can't get enough, apparently, and he signs a 2-year deal with the Eagles. And number 13 in the program, number 1 in your hearts, Ryan Wagner, returning to the Colorado Eagles next season. So we got 3 guys signed announcements, so at least since the AHL concluded their postseason. And then we've got 3 guys that are departing, which, Eagles fans shouldn't be too heartbroken about, because Apt, Davis, and Mika Salamäki didn't exactly, I don't know. I've heard it put that when somebody hits the ice, if you notice them playing like a Ryan Wagner, then you want that guy on your team. You want a guy that's noticeable on the ice.
Coach Cronin calls that visibility.
Visibility. Thank you. I'm like, what
word
is the
all
word?
the time. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's true. I mean, yeah, you look at it, it's like, that's the guy. It's like, he kind of defines it as, as somebody who's never been to a hockey game before, doesn't know anything about the sport. Who are they going to notice on the ice? Be like, wow, that guy's fast. Or like, oh, he's fun, or he hits hard, or like whatever. That's what visibility is to him. And it's like, how much do you notice a player? And that's kind of how he gauges how Coach Cronin engages, the performance of his guys and the worthiness of giving them ice time and whatnot. So I like that. I use it a lot all the time, visibility. And that's the first thing I noticed. I mean, it's like, we could call it the eye test. Like, do they pass the eye test? And that's, as soon as you're watching the first few shifts of the game, you can kind of notice who's having a good game, who's having a bad game. Of course, it can change on a dime, as guys kind of warm up or whatever. But for the most part, those guys that are consistently visible every single shift are the ones that, are difference makers and game changers. And those are the guys you want on your team. And yeah, I'm super happy. I had a feeling he was going to get re-signed just because, I mean, everyone in the locker room loves that guy. And, he's a fan favorite for sure. And unfortunately, none of the fans really got to see him this year unless they have the AHL TV subscription. But he's an awesome guy to be around, and he has a lot of fun, and that's what you want. You want those locker room guys, and he also performs on the ice, so it's great.
And it's to kind of still talk about the Eagles, but to shift a little bit into a different direction. We talk about those guys that have the visibility. And TJ Tynan is definitely another one of those guys, one of the best playmakers in the AHL. Last episode I think we talked about last episode. No, actually, I don't think we did. Winning the MVP award for the whole damn league. AHL MVP, TJ Tynan.
So we did talk about that and how much more expensive he's going to get because of that.
Yes, we did talk about that. Okay, yeah. I thought so, because that was the point that I was going to rehash, is that he made $800,000 on his two-way deal with the Avalanche, and he is an unrestricted free agent. And you've got to imagine that some team could come in and be like, hey, we're going to offer you X amount of dollars because you were the AHL MVP, to come play over yonder, over here. I don't know. I mean, his stock has definitely gone up for sure, but I think he's grown in leaps and bounds. Maybe not leaps and bounds, but he's definitely grown since he's joined the Avs and the Eagles organizations. And he's become, one of the best, like I said, one of the best playmakers in the league, and also one of the best special teams players in the league. I mean, him and Kiefer Sherwood on that Eagles power play, thing of beauty. Couldn't hold a candle to it really in anywhere else in the league on the power play.
No. Yeah, and I think that's a priority of the Eagles front office for sure, is to get him back on. And I mean, the hope is obviously he comes back. He's a great veteran presence, another guy that's loved in the locker room, and he's a leader. He's got the credentials, and for the past 3, 4, 5 seasons in the AHL, it's like, I mean, he's led the league in like assists, and he's been in the All-Star game a couple years in a row here, 2, 3 years. He's an ideal guy to have to kind of usher in that new generation of Avalanche prospects, which is, if you think about it, is kind of like the model player. Like, he's the kind of player that Joe Sakic wants on his team, the guy that's, fast, speedy, and highly skilled. And, I think he's a great kind of model for some of these young guys. Like, look how fast he moves the puck, look how fast he moves his feet, and he plays physical. He could play up and down the lineup, special teams, power play, penalty kill, whatever it is, whatever the coach needs from him, he's kind of the Swiss Army knife. And, I mean, I think the Eagles need to bring him back, but it's going to be the financial handicap. And we'll see if he takes maybe a hometown discount. Hopefully he loves it in Loveland. I don't see why he wouldn't, but there's always that chance that he can go somewhere else. And, it's to him at this point in his career, it's probably, where am I going to have the best chance of, getting a couple call-ups in NHL? And, it obviously hasn't happened with the Avalanche. He's only played a few games with them. So, you look at some of these other teams that, maybe have that aren't so good, maybe, and have more opportunity for an AHL veteran guy to get called up to the lineup. I think that's where he's going to go. Whether it's, it's probably not about money for him. It's going to be about, this could be my final chance. I'm the AHL MVP. Like, I'm catching some attention. There's a chance I could get some NHL games and try to prove myself at that level. Which team is going to offer me that? Which organization is going to offer me that best chance? So, I don't think it's the Avalanche. And I think that's kind of why this process is taking so long. And he's probably out there exploring his options, certainly fielding some phone calls with his agent. And yeah, obviously Eagles country, we're hoping he comes back, but I'm not feeling great about those odds.
Yeah. And speaking of two-way Avalanche deals, they signed a number of AHL guys to him because that's just kind of the season it was, just with COVID and everything. And the taxi squad. I mean, there was a lot of AHL guys that got signed to those two-way NHL deals for the 2020-21 season. And let me read these off real quick to kind of wrap this all up in a nice bow for the Colorado Eagles segment, because again, not a whole lot of news except for signings and re-signings. And I guess you could bring up the fact that the Pacific Division is going to have 9 teams next season, while 2 divisions will have 7 and 1 division will have 8. So Abbotsford moving over to the Pacific really, Scott Housen, AHL commissioner, was like, well, it was kind of last minute, so we didn't really know what to do. They weren't planning on bumping Colorado over to the Central. At least I don't think, at least not this season. They might when Palm Springs comes in 2022-23, but
yeah, I think that makes the most sense.
It does. And especially, I mean, Abbotsford, like they don't, as far as I know, like they don't have a nickname. They don't have a logo. They don't have jerseys.
Not yet.
So yeah, but anyway, that's a different topic for a different podcast.
I guess, and we can also talk about, I mean, this is kind of relatively new news. 100% capacity.
That's right.
The Eagles have already came out and said they're doing that, and stoked. I'm stoked to see that place, lit up again, and
gosh,
so much fun.
5,000
really
plus. Oh, it's gonna be nuts. It was so awkward to hear the pumped-in crowd noise, no one there, and you're just like, no smells of hot dogs and beers, like I've mentioned before on the program. It was so bizarre.
It really is like a difference. Like, I think we've touched on it too. It's like we can't complain about covering hockey, for a living, but it's kind of boring. Like when there's not, like it's just you in the press box alone, and there's nothing going on. It's like, that's part of the pomp and circumstance and the fanfare, whatever you want to call it. Like it's exciting, just to see that from the press box too. You get a bird's eye view of just, everyone going wild and just being loud, and it's fun. Obviously, anyone's been to a live sporting event, it's fun to be loud, and it's not fun just sitting there, watching by yourself. So I'm excited, to get that going. And obviously the NHL is going to be the same. They'll go to 100%. A lot of teams already have, but we're getting there. I think next season is going to be normal as normal can be these days. And I'm excited to be a part of that again. I know the fans are even more excited than
absolutely.
We got to go to hockey games. A lot of them have not for the last, year and some change.
Some change for sure. Yeah. It's, it'll definitely it'll be nice to take part in the, just taking in the atmosphere, and for the fans to take part in that atmosphere. It'll be good. But let me read this list because it's extensive, just like the Avs free agents that will be playing in the NHL next year. Let's talk about the Avs free agents that are on the cusp or will be playing in the AHL next season. Let's start off with the forwards. On the active Avs roster, Liam O'Brien, Mika Salamaki, like we talked about, he is not playing in North America next season. Kiefer Sherwood, boy, he was a good acquisition last season by the Eagles. Avs signed him to that 2-way deal like we talked about. As we keep scrolling down the list here, TJ Tynan, we mentioned him. Travis Barron, he becomes a restricted free agent at the age of 22. Michael Vecchione, Ty Lewis, Sheldon Dries. The list goes on. Kyle Burrows, Dennis Gilbert. Kind of disappointed that kind of bigger acquisition didn't really pan out to maybe, he could be a tough guy during the playoffs. I mentioned him, maybe Liam O'Brien, and neither of them were really utilized at all. So that was kind of disappointing. But to continue on, Dan Renouf, Connor Timmins is a 10.2 C free agent. And that means that this player, I'm learning something tonight, and I want to bestow that knowledge to the fans as well. This player has not accrued the necessary amount of professional seasons required for Group 2 restricted free agent status. They are ineligible for an offer sheet. And the frequently asked question goes in a little bit deeper. They become a free agent when their contract expires on July 1st after the last league year of the contract. So yeah, if they don't receive, and they're ineligible for arbitration either. So yeah, a little bit of a Weird bylaw. Thanks to Cap Friendly for that info. But
Yeah.
Scott, anything else to add to that? I mean, I tried to do it justice.
I was say a lot of work to do. It's a lot of guys. Obviously, many of them are not going to come back just
Right.
for various reasons, whether it's performance based or just lack of cap space. So
I mean, let's not forget about goalies either. I mean, of course, Devin Dubnyk is gone because you're going to have Philip Grubauer. You're going to have a healthy Pavel Francouz. And then you're going to have your AHL guys. So Justus Noonan is on his entry-level contract. Trent Miner, like I mentioned earlier in the program, he signed his entry-level contract. And then Hunter Miska, he's got 1 year left on his Avs contract, 21-22. So Hunter Miska is signed as well. The guys that are not signed, which I'm guessing will probably, Peyton Jones will probably get an AHL, maybe a two-way AHL deal, see him bounce back and forth between the Utah Grizzlies. Jonas Johansson, bye-bye. And Adam Werner in RFA. I don't think we see him in either Loveland or Denver with an Eagles or an Avalanche sweater on, because he's probably not going to want to do a Grizzlies jersey. So he's probably...
Yeah, you got a Noonan who's he came quicker than a lot of people expected, and
yes, he did.
He was always going to be the guy. When they drafted him, and it was never really going to be Werner, and that's kind of the case for a lot of goalies. It's like you get drafted, and most of the time it's like you're never going to see any time in the league. And it's cool to get drafted, but they always say goalies are notoriously hard to develop, and it takes a lot of years. And by that point, maybe they're in their third or fourth year as a pro, and they're finally starting to turn a corner and get there, but then they'll draft a Justus Noonan, and it's like, well, now now I'm taking a back seat, and he's younger than me. He's better than me, and he's going to be the guy. So it's like I'm obviously on my way out here, and you just hope that to catch the eye of another NHL team and be given a chance elsewhere, and continue to prove yourself. But I mean, most of these goalies can't break into the league until they're 25, 26, 27. That's when we start to see them fully developed, and they're playing really well and could be at least backup goaltenders at the NHL level, and be expected to play 20, 30 games a year. And then hopefully they win the job at some point. But it's tough. There's not a lot of goalies on the roster, obviously, and there's a lot of goalies out there that want to play. So it's just a numbers game, and it's tough. And it's unfortunate for him, but it is what it is. It's a business.
And, it reminds me a lot of, touching on, my early coverage days with the Idaho Steelheads a few years back. Philippe DeRosier, drafted by the Dallas Stars back in 2013, 54th overall, second round pick, plays for the Steelheads, plays for the Texas Stars, even plays a season with, the Norfolk Admirals in the ECHL as well, but mainly in the Idaho, Texas system. And then his ELC expires. And then I believe he signed one more deal, either with the Steelheads or with the Stars on a two-way deal. And then he goes and plays with the Springfield Thunderbirds. This season, DeRosier, he didn't really, he didn't play at all. But big news, big story on NHL.com. He made it. He got to make the Florida Panthers roster as a backup goaltender. He didn't see the ice. Like I said, he didn't play at all this season in the NHL or the AHL, but by God, because of COVID and everything and all the craziness, Philippe DeRosier was on the Florida Panthers roster for a game or two. And that's 2014 was when he was drafted. So like you said, sometimes it doesn't work out. And sometimes, you got to say happy trails. You remember Spencer Martin from a few years back for the Eagles organization. Had to move on to Syracuse, just didn't work out. So Hunter Miska, same with Tucson. Hunter Miska coming from Tucson to Colorado. He's got an opportunity here. So, and
it's tough, and you just got to hope that gamble pays off. And Justus Noonan is everything you hope he is. But eventually you got to give him the chance. And that's the thing. It's like to give them the chance at the AHL level, it means they have to play pretty much every single night. And you have that veteran backup like a Hunter Miska who will be playing second fiddle. But he's young. He looks great. Obviously, he's played set some records in Finland, and I know a lot of guys are excited about him. I think the whole team's excited about it. Organization's excited about it. But we just hope the gamble pays off. He could be a total dud. And that's just how it is. At one point, they were saying the same thing about Adam Werner. It's like this guy's the future. He's 6'5", 6'6", whatever. He's tall, lanky, like. This guy moves really well. Like, this is going to be our future. And then, wait a couple drafts. We're like, well, this guy looks good. Like, you just never know what's going to happen at the draft. And, that's the thing. It's a dog eat dog world, and on the depth chart, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see how that all works out. I mean, it's always fun, especially like a couple seasons ago. I remember, okay, Mason McDonald was a goaltender that, I'm like, all right, he could play for the Grizzlies. He might be a backup for the Eagles. And then Hunter Miska came in, and then you had Adam Warner. And then I don't believe Martin Ouellet was in goal. No, he was acquired midseason by the Grizzlies a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's always fun to conjecture, okay, is Peyton Jones coming back? I mean, he signed a 1-year deal, AHL, out of Penn State. Maybe again he'll bounce back and forth between the Grizzlies and the Eagles if need be, but we'll see. We shall see.
Yeah.
But yeah, with no taxi squad either, that's going to, of course, eliminate some goaltending spots.
Not a lot of spots available. Yeah.
Yeah. Only so many seats at the table for sure. But Scott, last but definitely not least, we're going to skip over the collegiate portion of the show because there's really no news. There's no news to report.
That time of the year.
It's that time of the year. That's the thing about
September,
college.
I guess.
Well,
yeah.
Yep. Hang in there. Robson Arena, hoping to see and be there in person for that opening. So stay tuned for that, Front Range hockey fans. But yeah, asking the feed, going to take some questions from the fans. And like Scott mentioned earlier, a lot of free agency questions. So let's dive into it. But first, let's talk expansion draft. Of course, we're coming up month, maybe even less than a month. I know we're in the 30 days-ish.
Less than a month, yeah.
Less than a month.
I want to say it's like July. Is it July 15th, maybe? I don't know. Something like that. So
yeah, I don't know. But Seattle Kraken announcing their head coach, first ever head coach, is going to be Dave Haxtell, former Philadelphia Flyers head coach. So bringing him in, kind of a surprise, like I said, but we'll see. We'll see. And then So first question. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm all over the place. Desktop Penguin. Our good friend at Desktop Penguin. How can we keep both Jost and Graves in the expansion draft?
That's going to be tough.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a proponent of, the Avs going with the Model B approach, which would be, the 8 forwards combined with 8 skaters. And that wouldn't see, it's still so hard. Like you got to think, is like you're protecting your top 3 guys, your top line. Cale Makar obviously is in there. You got to protect a goalie, so that's one of the 9. So we're at 5 of the 9. And then Sam Girard I think's protected. It's gonna be tough. Like I think Tyson Jost they're both. It's both those guys that are likely gonna be the candidate number 1, target number 1 of Seattle's expansion, I think. And it'll be tough to protect both of them, and that's why I think they're going to have to go with the trade bait, where it's like they'll take this guy, whether it's Eric Johnson or not, but take so and so off our hands. We'll give you Martin Kaut and a second round pick if you take our 3rd string goalie or something. Like that's a lot of teams did that with Vegas, and it worked out well for them. Just load them up in the future, give them a couple draft picks and some prospects, and hope for the best. But I think it's gonna be tough. Those are the top 2 guys I think that are gone. Maybe you could throw JT Compher in there as well, but I think they protect Ryan Graves for sure. I think he's on my list of guys to protect. So that probably leaves Jost exposed. And at this point, I know everyone knows my position on Tyson Jost. I was not a big Tyson Jost guy for the last 2 or 3 years, but things change. He played really, really well this year and kind of emerged as one of the best defensive forwards in the league. And he plays special team minutes. Was great on the penalty kill. Coach Bernard loves the guy, and I think the team loves the guy. So he's an interesting case, but I would love to protect Tyson Jost, but I don't know if it's going to be possible. I think the Avs are kind of backed into a corner. They're going to lose a good player either way. So, are you Joe Sakic? Can you try to, play it smart, lose some, free up some cap space, I guess, and try to, it's like, hey, take JT Compher and, a 2nd round pick, 3rd round pick, something like that. and a prospect, and please, and then hope for the best. So it's gonna be tough. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but yeah, I think it's probably gonna be one of those guys if they don't decide to package somebody up. Oh, you're muted. Classic.
Yeah, sorry.
Rookie.
Total rookie mistake. See, I was muted because I was typing and pulling up stats and clicking on the mouse, and yeah, total rookie mistake. I'm gonna have to edit that out. Oh, it's live. We're doing it live. Oh God, we're live, pal.
We'll do it live.
Fuck it. We'll do it live. We're live, pal. That's a pro wrestling one. If you're not a pro wrestling fan, Jim Ross, good old JR, interviewing Psycho Sid during SummerSlam. I want to say 92 or 93. And Sid forgets his lines that he was fed. And he's like, I'm sorry, I forgot. And JR's like, we're live, pal. So that's another one I like to use. We're live, pal. That. Yeah. So anyway, let's move on. Like I was saying, when my mic was so rudely muted by me. But yeah, let's move on to the next question. And we're going to talk about free agents, and we're going to we're just going to do it rapid fire because there's a lot of.
We can lump a few of these together. Yeah, it's a lot of UFA questions for sure.
Right. So dude, where's McCarr at Joel the Sakic says and asks, who are some realistic free agent targets for the Avs? And Fuzzy Dunlop at Dunlop 069 says, I would like to add Coleman, Denault. I can't. Denault. Thank you. I'm freaking myself out here. Gotta calm, refocus. And Hyman for the playoff purposes. Okay. Those are some good names, but cap space, of course, is going to be an issue. Would be a deadly third line. I'm fine with Donskoy and Comfer being moved to make it happen. Fair. Leaves Kadri, Newhook, and Berkey for second, and Jost Val Nichishkin. There we go.
There you go.
Deep breaths. And Ranta or Kaut for the fourth. I think Scott might argue LOC for that fourth line. Move Graves to and bring in Oleksiak.
Yeah.
There's your grit. Holy shit.
Oleksiak's been a guy that's been on a lot of guys' radar, and it's someone that I think last offseason talked about, the Avs needed, or last trade deadline, I think. Yeah, I was like, I think that's the guy. I think he's great. You saw what he did to the Avalanche in the second round of the playoffs last year, and he's a stud. I mean, the dude's 6'7". He's huge. He plays hard. He blocks shots. He could score too. That's the craziest thing. Like, the dude's actually extremely agile for being so big, and I think a lot of guys were afraid to hit him. And that's that's something that I think
there's a reason they call him Big Rig.
Yeah, it's like, try hitting him, and like you're gonna end up on the ice, somehow. Yeah. But so yeah, I mean, that's a guy I'm super interested in. I'll lump him into my free agent talks if there's going to be anybody. It's affordable for the Avalanche. I think as far as back end, I think that's target number one. If you're looking for a defenseman that fits the bill, covers all your bases, that's the guy. I mean, I would love to add Coleman as well, and all those guys. But I think priority number one. Did you throw Alex's question in there? You might still be muted. Something's going on with your mic. I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. All right.
Wait.
There it is.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, this thing has a really touchy trigger for yeah, I taped it with hockey tape, but it slid. It slid down. Oh, I am so sorry. I moved and it bumped it. Man,
all right, I guess I'm taking over. Here we go.
Yeah, all right, here we go. CC, can't hear you. I'm talking. No, let me tee up Alex's question here.
I'll just throw it in there. Yeah, priority list for RFAs and UFAs for SAC to resign. I think I'll use that as my jumping off point. I think the priority is in-house work. There's a lot of guys. Whether it's, obviously Cale Makar is priority number one for RFAs. And then, Gabe Landeskog, there's been some speculation that maybe he, is a candidate to be exposed, which, I wouldn't read too much into that one, or, should we get rid of him? Should we not? It's like, I don't think so.
No,
I think he's the leader of the team. Everyone loves him. He doesn't perform, sometimes he's not scoring 30 goals a season anymore, and, putting up 60 points. Like, that's just, at the same time though, it's like everyone's always concerned about the tangibles. Everyone wants to talk about, Like, well, how many goals do you score? Like, what's how many, like, what's his stat line look like? And it's like, yo, you're looking at the most offensively potent hockey team in the NHL and the Colorado Avalanche. Like, they can afford to lose some guys, or guys that don't score 30 goals a season. Like, that's just not, a huge need of theirs right now. I think they'll do just fine if they lose. Like, they don't need goal scoring. So like what they need right now and what we're seeing, going back to what I first talked about, is they need that physical edge to them. And everyone wants to go for like the big name, like go get Taylor Hall this offseason. Like, that'll be your difference maker. Like, fuck that. No. Like, they have enough goal scoring. They have enough of that offensive firepower. They don't need that shit anymore. Like, they need a guy like Jamie Alexiak for $2 million a year, $3 million. He's probably be more than that. But a guy like Corey Perry, it's like, these are like not sexy names, but these are names that are efficient, cost efficient for one, efficient on the ice, and they're, not putting up numbers, Jason Spezza, Corey Perry, like all those guys, like that's not what it's about. And that's not what the Avs need. They don't need offensive numbers right now. They have that for the last, 4 or 5 years combined. They've, they scored the most goals in the NHL over the last 5 years total. So they're good on the goal scoring department. Again, I think if they're going to make any sort of moves, one, it's going to be signing all the in-house guys, that they need to sign. The big three, you got Philip Grubauer, Cale Makar, and then, Gabe Landeskog are going to take up a pretty sizable chunk of your, $25 million you have available. We're going to see guys like Logan O'Connor, who's on a very friendly deal. Martin Kaut might finally get his shot. Alex Newhook's going to be a full-timer. Those guys are all playing for under $1 million, each season. And that's cost efficient. And that's what the Avalanche need at this point in time, because they don't have the cap space. Even if they do lose a guy to Seattle in the expansion draft, which obviously they will lose a guy. So yeah, it's going to free up some cap space, but that's just going to be, taken up by more guys that need to be re-signed. So that said, when someone takes Seattle, Seattle takes someone from the Avalanche, like there will be a little bit of cap space up. Like, I'm thinking $2 to $3 million probably. And, that leaves you a couple names out there, which I think I'm just going to jump ahead in the queue again and ask.
Not Seth
I guess
Jones.
No, it was
Not
dude.
Seth
Yeah.
Jones.
Dude, it was Joel's question. So we'll wrap that up with that. I think I covered all my bases so far, but realistic free agent targets. And the key word here, thank you, Joel, is realistic, because, everyone wants the big name free agents like Alexander Ovechkin's a UFA. And like, it's like, dude, you guys are crazy. You guys are weird.
This isn't EA Sports. It's not in the game, for crying out loud.
It's like there is a cap space at the end of the
There
game.
is. Yep.
So, I mean, I would love to, bring back Brandon Saad. I think a lot of people would. He's that veteran presence who performed very well in the playoffs. That's what he was brought here to do. The Avs need more of that, though. So I think, that's going to be a priority of theirs to re-sign a guy like him. He's still pretty young. He's only 28, like turning 29. So he's still young. Plays well, was great on that second line, third line, middle six kind of guy that plays well in the playoffs. Or a guy like, go get Ryan Getzlaf. Or, I already said Jamie Alexiak, or a David Backes. One of these guys who have won Stanley Cups, who are, 35 and up. They're not necessarily attractive names. It's not sexy, but these are guys that can play like your third line, your second unit power play or penalty kill, wherever they slot in. And show up in, the months of late April through May, and hopefully all the way through June. Because that's been the key. That's been the theme, I guess, over the last few years, is we haven't played hockey in June, really. The Avalanche haven't. So that's who I would go for. I like a guy like Ryan Getzlaf. He, fills all the holes. I think as far as, physical grit, likes to hit, can score some goals. He's been there, done that. The league respects him. The locker room will obviously respect him. And I think that's a guy that he's probably my number one, I think.
That's a solid list. That is a solid list. And you can hear me now, correct?
Yes.
Good. Yeah. I think the last time the Avs, brought in a veteran defenseman, I'll focus on that, and played out his last couple years, in the new millennium, finished a 22-year career. After 22 years, Raymond Bourque. That worked out well. But of course, people will point to, well, what about Paul Kariya? What about Teemu Selanne? What about Theo Fleury? And it's like, oh, well, then there's that. But you didn't have as robust of a roster as you did in the late 90s and early aughts, and as you do now. So bringing in one of those character guys, I think it would be good. It would be not, it wouldn't be detrimental at all. I don't think. In fact, it would only benefit.
It'd be
So,
helpful. And those
very,
are guys,
very,
they're
very
probably not
helpful.
going to be a lot of attention, for a guy like, Ryan Getzlav.
Right.
So he's a guy that you could sign, for $2-3 million. Like, he just wants another chance. He's played his whole career with Anaheim, but if they decide to mutually part ways, it's like he is the best chance of winning a cup is going to be with the Avalanche. So I think he'd be very willing to take, a discount and come play in Colorado. And I think that should be a priority for the Avalanche.
I'm shaking my head because I just saw a clip of Cole Caulfield pot yet another goal in the series and bring Montreal up one. His edge work is Makar-esque. It's phenomenal. This kid, my God, when we were covering him coming into Laval, Sean was like, no, he's not going to be in Laval very long. And he was right. So making an impact for sure.
I remember following him quite a bit, when Alex Newhook was a freshman. They were both kind of competing for top 2, top 3. I think Caulfield ended up, winning.
Baker?
I don't know if he won that. Maybe he did. I don't know. But as far as just scoring as a freshman, I think Caulfield ended up number 1. Newhook was 2 or 3, something like that. But yeah, 2 very exciting guys. So again, think of Alex Newhook as your Cole Caulfield, and maybe. I don't know. I don't know if you can compare them. They're different players, but hopefully we see a guy like Alex Newhook come into his own. He didn't really have that much of a chance this year, but there's a lot to be excited about. Everyone wants to talk about the free agents because it's that time of the year. The draft's coming up. Who are they going to trade at the draft? And that'll segue into one of our next questions about Kadri and trading him at the draft. But we'll get into that. But yeah, it's always it's always so exciting this time of year because free agency day is coming up, and then you got the draft. There's some trades that happen during the draft, or will the Avalanche move up and get a first round or early first round pick? But you got to think about it. It's sometimes it's not. It can't always be sexy. I've thrown around that word. You can't expect Joe Sakic to go out every single year and just fleece the entire league for pennies on the dollar. That's just unfortunately, not going to be it. And we're getting to that point where he's just hampered by the cap space, and it's going to be like that, this year as well. That's why everyone wants to judge his move about Patrick Nemeth and Carl Soderberg, bringing those guys in, but it's he doesn't have money to spend. And at the time, those were great moves. Bringing a couple of veteran guys who have been in the playoffs with the Avalanche, who had pretty solid seasons, for the last couple of years in their respective locales. So I thought it was smart, bringing the guys that know the system. They know Coach Bednar and his system very well. It'll be a seamless transition back into the organization. And, those are their veteran guys that love to hit, love to block shots, and could be there for a long-term, playoff run. And unfortunately it didn't work out, and everyone's, wants to skewer Joe Sakic and toss him to the wolves or whatever. But it's they look bad now, but you can't predict the future. At the time, they're great moves. I thought they're sneaky good moves. We talked about that on the podcast after the trade deadline, and a lot of people, they were not too bummed about it. Everyone's like, all right, these moves make sense. Well done, Joe Sakic. That's a B+, trade deadline, B-, whatever you want to call it. But everyone's, raving about it. And then as soon as, playoffs come, everyone just cowers back in their shells and fire him. What stupid moves those were. And it's dude, I could probably go back on each of those Twitter accounts, to the trade deadline day, search their tweets, and then find it well done, Joe Sakic. That was a great move. So
yeah. Yep. Yeah. The receipts don't lie. The receipts don't lie.
Yeah, exactly. Screenshots live forever. But
yes, they do. Yes, they do.
So
at Dank Coins, are there any trade targets you see the Avs pursuing this offseason? I feel like you answered that pretty thoroughly.
I could see them making a trade just to free up some cap space, and that'll lead into that Nazem Kadri question. I think that's definitely a candidate.
Is there a Nazem Kadri question?
Yeah, Rick Sally, LTC at LTC Payne 75. Do you think Kadri gets traded at the draft or trade deadline? Which Rick's trying to back us into a corner here and not giving us the option to not trade him. Do you think Kadri gets traded at the draft or traded at the draft or the trade deadline?
There's no option C.
Yeah, exactly.
Rick, come on.
Which, to be fair, again, I think he is a candidate to get traded. He's got some value still as a veteran guy, and everyone's pissed at him obviously for what he did in the playoffs and not being able to play when the team needed him. And it is what it is. He got screwed by the league a little bit. I think he deserved to get suspended for sure, but 8 games is a little bit excessive. We've already talked about the player safety issues, but whatever. So I think he is a good candidate to get traded. If anyone's going to get traded, I think it's probably going to be him, because I think the league at large still sees some value in him. And I don't think it's going to be happening at the draft. I don't think the Avs make any trades at the draft. I could see them, maybe holding on to Kadri through the trade deadline, seeing if, hopefully, given he's in a contract year as well, I believe, coming up soon, light a fire under his ass too, just like Jared Bednar, and see,
Sure.
in a contract year, if he can go out there and, return to his Toronto Nazem Kadri, where he scores 20, 25, 30 goals a year, and or playoff Nazem Kadri from last year. Everyone's got short-term memory loss. Like, the dude was an absolute stud in the postseason last year for the Avalanche, and like led in goals and was scoring every single game, it seemed like. And didn't show up in the first few games, didn't show up the last 20 games of the regular season, and everyone wants to, burn him at the stake. And I get it, that's how it is. Everyone's got short-term memory in sports, and as you should, it's like no one remembers who the Stanley Cup winner was last year. Like, it's a new season, it's a new, whatever you want to call it. So, start fresh. But I think they give him another chance. If they're going to trade him, I think, they'll try to trade him during the season or at the trade deadline, and just see if they can hopefully, spark some magic early in the year.
Next couple questions. We are on the tail end. We got a lot of good fan questions this time around. I'm happy that we got a lot of good engagement. Scott's got this down. His formula, 3 p.m. Boom, scheduled tweet. Yeah. Puts it out there. Everybody jumps right in. It is when everyone's active. They're like, man, I want to go home from work. I'm going to check Twitter. Oh, Scott. Hey, great Scott, Marty.
I don't think everyone has that reaction to my tweets, but
hey, I do. So. I'm like, I'm heading out the door from my day job, and I'm like, Scott, oh, he tweeted. Yay. Okay, maybe not like that. But yeah. It warms my heart. I'm like, all right, Scott's putting it out there. He scheduled it. We're good. But our good friend Matthew Villanueva, Unpucky Guy, at Unpucky Guy, a 2-part question and a response from Fuzzy Dunlop. Should the Avs give Landy a new deal and not protect him? Let him go to Seattle and protect another top prospect. He says Kaut is disappointing. The kid just isn't living up to expectations. If we ever lose Kaut, no big loss if you ask me. Shrug emoji. Fuzzy Dunlop at Dunlops069 replied, he's 21 and did all right in the AHL this year, 16 points in 20 games. If he plays fast and physical, that's all that is needed on the 4th line. Again, I see your Martin Kaut and raise you Logan O'Connor for that 4th line. Scott and I have talked about this. I'm in agreement with the president of the Logan O'Connor fan club in Scott McDonald. But I saw this question and I'm like, why would you let your captain walk? I know that it's a hefty price tag and you might, McKinnon's gone on record that if he needs to take a pay cut for them to become a Stanley Cup contender again, then maybe you restructure that deal. Maybe you pair that with Landeskog re-signing with the Avs, my opinion. And then, you lock up Makar, you lock up Grubauer. It's
it's definitely interesting. And I don't know how realistic it is. But it's certainly something to think about, if you want a complete culture change. I don't think, anything that's happened this year or over the last couple of years, warrants a complete culture change and, finding a new captain or making, Nathan MacKinnon your captain. Like, I honestly don't think Nathan MacKinnon's captain material. Sorry, but just from what I've known of the guy the last, few years covering him and what I've seen of his attitude, and the dude's a competitor. There's no doubt about that. He leads by example for sure, and he's a guy that Coach Bednar will always talk about. Like, he's talking to the room. He's, going up there, standing up with, Gabe Landeskog, talking about that. But I don't think he wants to, be the captain. Nor do I think he really should be. I don't think they should get rid of, Gabe Landeskog. Yes, it frees up some cap space. I get that, but there's other ways you could free up your cap space by losing a lot less. And this dude is as captain gets, and that's like all you want. Like, he's a fearless leader. He doesn't show up at certain times. Sure, he's not scoring 20 or 30 goals anymore, but the Avs don't need that. Like I've said a few times now, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, you need that leadership, and that's something the Avalanche lack. I think he's a great leader. He's great in the community. Everyone in the locker room loves him. Coaches love him. Organization loves him. He wants to finish. He's gone on record by saying he wants to finish his career here, and I think that's going to be the case. And why wouldn't you want him to? So it's exciting to talk about that and talk about a complete 180 culture change. But why would you need to do that right now? It's not like the Avs just absolutely bombed, anything. It was a tough year, tough situation with the playoffs, and I think they're close. We've been saying it for a long time. They're close, and Nathan MacKinnon said, now famously after the post game press conference, yeah, let's talk about next year. I feel like we're always talking about next year, but I'm going into my 9th year now, having won shit, and yeah, we're always talking about next year, and it seems like I always keep saying we're one piece away. We're one player away, and I truly do think they are. It just starts with that veteran presence. A guy that can stand up for teammates, chip in a little bit, and just, a guy that has playoff mentality. I mean, the Avs are just a very, very inexperienced playoff team. They're far too young to really compete with, the big dogs. So again, it's not about physicality and hitting. The Avs have that. They're not finishing dead last and, not even bottom 10 and hitting. They're very average in the hitting department, but, mental toughness is something the Avalanche lack. And, just a presence is something they lack. They needed that guy that anytime he steps on the ice, oh shit. And
Yeah.
you have Nathan MacKinnon, who's oh shit or oh boy, in his own right, and that's great. But there's nobody else. It's so easy to pick apart that Avalanche team once you pick their good guys on each line. That's it. It all kind of falls apart. So it's a house of cards that the Avs have built up, and it's maybe a bit of a facade, I think, as well. That they're an elite team. Obviously, I'm not going to take that away from them, but I think they're in a way, pretenders to a certain degree, and I think it's all a bit of a facade. What they've built up, and that house of cards comes crumbling down, and they're you realize the weakest link and the missing piece that they're missing, and it's we've talked about it. It's that physicality, it's that presence, and until they get that, they're going to keep bowing out in the second round. That's just how it's going to be.
Well, and honestly, I know this may sound a little crazy and hot takey, and I'm willing to take that heat. But out of the three, Landeskog, Makar, and Grubauer, those top three guys that need to be re-signed, I mean, I may sound a little crazy because he's a Vezina Trophy candidate or Vezina Trophy finalist. I could see Grubauer out of those three. That's the most realistic person that I could see being moved on from, because you've seen those glimmers of brilliance from him, even though he's 31 years old, in Pavel Francouz. Only going to take a $2 million hit, but I'm talking money here, and it's probably a foolish thing on my part because Philip Grubauer, I mean, he made $3.3 million in his last contract. Vezina Trophy finalist, you probably bump that up to 4, maybe 4.5, even 5.
I think he's getting
on the open market
5 to 6.
Oh, okay,
for sure. I think he's getting Jordan Bennington money, which is a 6x6 contract. I think that's probably what he's looking at. That's going to be the measure. But then people are going to look at his playoff performances, over the last few years, and he blew it, a little bit. I think that the whole team blew it, obviously, but did not have a good series, especially the last 3 games had a combined 0.78 or 0.8 goals against average or something. It's just not great, especially that last game 6, he let in some softies, and it's tough. But yeah, no, I think to your point, that's definitely a candidate of those 3 guys. I think he's the most likely to be moved on from if they decide to go save some money, and if they can't get him for $5 million or less, I think you got to let him walk. Because there's good names out there. There's Tuukka Rask, Pecorine. Go after a veteran, sign him to a 1-year prove it kind of deal.
Yeah,
for $3 million, $4 million. A veteran guy who's been there, done that. You have Pavel Francouz, who didn't get to see much of him this year, obviously, so we don't really know. But over in his first year in the NHL, I mean, dude was a starter. He played a good chunk of the season as a starter and was really, really good. And
yeah.
When you have a team as good as the Avalanche, are, at least in the regular season, playing in front of, them. I mean, look, they made Jonas Johansson look great, and that's, not an easy task to do, but they made him, what, 4-1, 5-1, in his 6 starts in the NHL, and 9.2 save percentage. He's not that good of a goalie. But when you're, pushing players to the outside, and it's low percentage shots and low quality shots, then you could put in just about anybody in there, and they're going to look great. So you got to think about that too. And yep, he's a Vezina Trophy finalist, and obviously the preference would be for, I think, anyone in the organization to keep him, but it's going to be, this is his year to make money, and it's one of those things too with like the players. You got to look at them and be like, do you want to take the hometown discount, and like this is the best team you're gonna have a chance to like win the cup with, because I'm sure the Avs will still be a top 3 favorite heading into next year, I would assume. So take a little less money and stay with us for another couple of years, or yep, you had your best season of your career, you're a Vezina Trophy finalist, go make $6.5 million with somebody, and that's fine. Go get Andrei Vasilevsky money, go try for it. You got to respect that. It's a numbers game. It's about money, but
it reminds me different parts, not as a whole, but it reminds me of segments of the Marc-Andre Fleury situation in Vegas with Robin Lehner. It reminds me of the Pittsburgh Penguins situation when they had to expose Marc-Andre Fleury to Vegas over Matt Murray, which is looking like not the best decision on their part, but I mean, yeah, a mistake. I was putting it nicely. Yeah. And then it kind of also reminds me a little bit of the the Jimmy Howard and Peter Mrazek situation in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really kind of shocked that they stayed with Jimmy Howard and let Peter Mrazek walk. And Mrazek, I thought, is doing great, phenomenal work there in Carolina. And so, yeah, it's kind of that. I don't want to ring the alarm bells or anything, because the Avs could just go ahead and re-sign Philip Grubauer, and it wouldn't be no big thing. And it would be a powerful 1-2 punch with him and Pavel Francouz. But of those 3, the one that I can see walking the most, like you said, is Grubauer, because this is, like you said, this is his year to go and make that money, or he could stay and take that discount. So
a lot to be had here in the next even month. We're gonna see. I'm not even sure when the free agency deadline is, or when it like opens. So I mean, we'll see.
Is it still July 1? I can't even remember now.
I don't know. I assume it probably moved just like everything else.
Yeah.
I mean, probably. No, because the Stanley Cup Final will still be going on during that. So yeah, I think the last possible like Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final would be like July 13th or 14th. I think July 15th is going to be the expansion draft. I'm totally pulling that out of my ass. I don't know, actually. But I think it's somewhere around there, 15, 16, 17. And then I think maybe it's like July 20th, maybe. It's like free agency opens up.
Let's find out here. Hang on. NHL calendar, key dates for the 2021 season. See, I'm curious. I want to look. All right. 2021 key dates. All right. July 15th, last possible date for the Stanley Cup Final.
Okay. So that's
July 21st, NHL expansion draft, Seattle.
Okay.
July 23rd to 24th, 2021 NHL draft. And July 28th, free agency opens at 10 a.m. Mountain, noon Eastern time. So there's your calendar.
Okay.
Gonna go into the mid and late July.
Like a week behind, but again, like all that shit happens in the next 4 or 5
months.
weeks.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be hectic. It's gonna be crazy. I mean, things may look a lot different. Things may not look different at all. There's just really it's hard to tell. The Avs are in an interesting spot this year. It's not going to be fun. They're not going to go after anyone. The only way they do get someone exciting is if they make some trades, which could happen. It's Joe Sakic we're talking about. He's been known to go for those, and he might make a crazy trade or NHL draft trade. So
we'll see.
Yeah, that's all we can say at this point. We'll see. And
what you're telling me, Scott, if I'm reading between the lines here, is the Avs are going to go after and sign Alex Ovechkin.
Yes, that's it.
Sorry,
that's what everyone wants. Yeah,
I
don't understand why they can't just go out there and get Taylor Hall and like Alex Ovechkin.
Yeah, because
God, and trade for Andrei Vasilevsky out of Tampa Bay. How is that so hard? Like, I don't understand. Like, there are people like that on our timelines and our Twitter feeds.
It's not a video game, unfortunately.
It's laughable. I don't block anybody, but I mute some people.
Yeah, you're just like, are you trolling me or?
Because they'll constantly be in like my my mentions about it. It's like anything I post, like, Scott, wow, that like re-signing so-and-so looked like real good, didn't it? Like, you're such a dipshit. It's all right, man. Again, I think blocking is the coward's way out. So I don't give them that satisfaction of blocking them. I just mute them. So
Yeah, so they don't even know about it.
Shit. Yeah.
They're like,
that pisses them off a lot more.
Scott's ignoring me. What the hell? Well, that's because I muted you. So
yeah.
Last question, and of course, it's one of our favorites. It's from Gil Manklang at Gil_MANECLANG. And Gil bringing the fire, bringing the action hero, bringing the action hero topic today, saying favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger, or sorry, best Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. His would be Terminator 1, 2, and also True Lies. Scott, do you want to defer or take the first crack
I'll
at this?
take it, get it out of the way, because mine's honestly boring. Like, I would say Terminator is the best movie, right?
Okay.
Like,
first
so
one?
I'd say, yeah.
Okay.
I would say the first one, and I think he played like a featured role, so it's not really an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, but he was in it, but like the Expendables
there you go.
are good ones. But I would say, yeah, those two. I'm not really like big on Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know.
See, and as a 90s kid, like I grew up with
that's
those
more
movies.
Your territory. That's why I was going to let you round it out, because you probably have a way better response than I do.
And I had a couple of stepbrothers that I grew up with that were huge like horror movie fans, action movie. They loved Jean-Claude Van Damme, loved Arnold Schwarzenegger, just real big on those movies. So I'm a little more well-versed in that regard just because of my generation.
Sure.
But I mean, you could go, I'm going to flex my knowledge a little bit here. You could go with some deep cuts like The Sixth Day, or when he was a clone. I have a clone. He's trying to kill me. Wow, don't kill me now. Don't do it. Oh, you could go with Predator. There you go. Kill me now. Do it.
Totally forgot about that.
The chopper. Yes, Predator. Who the hell are you? You could go with that, or you could go with Jingle All the Way. That was a nice comedic turn for Arnold. Not familiar with Jingle All the Way?
Nope.
Action Man? Oh my goodness. Anyway. Sinbad, the comedian, was in that. You probably don't even know.
I do know Sinbad.
Oh, you do know Sinbad?
Yeah,
okay.
I do actually.
I stand corrected. Forgive me for that.
My mom is big on Sinbad. That's the only reason why I know.
That's
I've seen his special.
His stand-ups and everything. Okay,
Yeah.
That's fair. So I could go with those movies just to be a contrarian. It was super campy and super over the top, but I really enjoyed. Was it Batman and Robin, the one that had Mr. Freeze in it? Because I mixed those two up, Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. So now I need to look it up. But the one where he played Mr. Freeze and he was super just over the top campy. And it was Batman and Robin. Because Batman Forever was with Two-Face and the Riddler and came before that. But so I enjoyed his take on that. But anyways, I'm rambling. It's a fun question, and we've already gone long because we've been talking about free agency for 100 years.
Yeah, it's our longest podcast. I mean,
is.
If we're going every other week, it's probably going to be like this. We got stuff to cover. We got a lot to talk about, even in the off season.
We really did. We really do. So, long story short, I mean, really enjoyed Conan the Barbarian. Really enjoyed.
You're still going, okay?
Yeah.
I was like, dude, you've had to list off his entire IMDb index at this point.
I'm not even looking at it. That's the thing.
Oh my god, man, you were out of control.
But no,
I
that's what I was going for, was to impress you, Scott. No, to impress the listeners, to impress you, to impress everyone. But long story short, I'm old. I'm betraying that fact right now, but I liked Conan the Barbarian. That's probably in my top 3. True Lies was good too. He was really good in that. And then I also enjoyed, I was too young for the first Terminator, but Terminator 2, I thought he did a really good job in. So those are my top 3. Terminator 2, True Lies. And
dude, those are your top 18. What do you mean? So many.
That's fair. All right.
I'm impressed.
I could throw the Running Man in there too.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any more?
I'm done. Scott.
Okay.
Yeah, I could tell I'm getting on Scott's nerves maybe a little bit.
No.
Like,
just again, I had no idea he was in that many movies, to be honest with you. Like,
yeah, he was huge. Yeah. He was huge in the 80s and 90s for sure. Right. But we need to end front range hockey. We need to do it now, because the former gubernatorial candidate and gubernatorial man in California, he needs to say, "Get to the chopper, do it now." Okay, I'm done. I'm done with my Arnold impression.
I hope you guys all enjoyed that.
Yes. Forgive me for butchering that, but that's episode 23, longest episode, almost 90 minutes in the books. Thanks for hanging with us. Thanks for dealing with the long-windedness, coming back from vacation and maybe being a little too talkative with caffeine in the system. But yeah, episode 23, Front Range Hockey, part of the Full Press Coverage network of shows and podcasts. You can listen to this, other hockey podcasts, other sports and sports entertainment shows at fullpresscoverage.com. Click the podcast down menu, click the drop down menu, all the shows. So thanks for choosing us out of all the programming. We really appreciate it. Scott, where can people find your work if they are not aware?
Yeah. Well, it's scrolling right there. You can follow me on Twitter at offscottfree, at 0ffscottfree. I'm there. Well, I no longer really every single day. I was during the season, I tweet quite a bit, but these days, things are slow. But I was on vacation the last couple of weeks, but now I'll be back in it. We'll be talking some expansion draft stuff on Twitter, some obviously free agency coming up and drafts coming up. That's all fun stuff. So I'll be live on Twitter quite a bit, where you can find my written work. Will also be posted at coloradohockeynow.com. And again, it's going to be a slower time of the year. We're not posting every single day anymore because there's really not much to talk about. We want to, make sure we're bringing you guys relevant stuff and not just filler. So it's going to be slow. Bear with us. We got a fun month coming ahead.
Absolutely. And thanks again for hanging with us in the long-windedness and the rabbit trails and the sidetracks and all that. We were eager to get back into the mix of things. And yeah, thanks for enduring my horrible Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. But I believe I do the Macho Man Randy Savage a little better. But again, different topic for a different podcast. So my name is CC Hawkley. You can find my work at Full Press Coverage, at Full Press Hockey to be more specific, fullpresshockey.com, covering the Colorado Eagles and the AHL at large. You can follow for all the latest up-to-date AHL transactions, who's staying, who's leaving to Europe, FPC_AHL, at FPC_AHL on Twitter. My personal account is at CC Hawk. That's SEESEEHAWK. And yeah, I got good taste in music. I've got good taste in sports. At least I like to think so. So like I say, if it keeps me interested, it's not going to be bullshit for you. That's my hope anyway. So with that all said, let's wrap this up before an hour and 30 minutes ticks on the clock in the upper left-hand corner. That's our cue. So for Scott McDonald, I'm Cece, and we thank you guys for tuning in and enduring the beginning of what's going to be a very eventful offseason for Colorado professional hockey. So thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate the questions. Guys, gals, and non-binary pals, stay colorful, my friends, and we will see you in probably a couple weeks. Take care.
Bye-bye.